In the latest update for World of Tanks Blitz, there were a lot of changes to consumables, equipment, and overall playstyle when it comes to the game. And a lot of people don't really understand the implications of what have happened to Blitz. So in today's video, I'll be breaking into the changes and why I personally think Wargaming is trying to nerf heavy tanks quite a bit, as a lot of these changes will definitely hinder your capabilities when driving a heavy. Mediums have gotten a lot better, so let's get into it why. So, gun rammer got nerfed a bit, right? It's not that big of a deal, though, because calibrated shells got a big buff. AP and heat now have more penetration on calibrated shells, going from 5% to 8% pen and 10% to 13% pen. Now, this is a huge change for mediums, because the majority of mediums in tier 10 fire premium heat, and previously they only had around 330 to 20 mils of pen, where now a vehicle like a 907 has 339 mils of heat pen. Now a vehicle like the 140 has 328 mils of heat pen, and this is enough penetration to now easily cut through the majority of heavily armored vehicles you are aiming at, and that is obviously really nice. When you look at a TVP with 328 mils of pen, it's really dangerous. And you also got to remember that all AP was buffed. So even though the Caro has APCR premium, which didn't get changed, the standard pen on all mediums is now sitting just upwards of 270, which is kind of crazy. Where, you know, heavy tanks, yes, they did get buffs as well in terms of the pen. You know, a WZ-113 now has 390 mils of pen. But as I've pointed out to people, do you need that much pen? You know, it's the same thing for heavies that went from 350 to 360 mils of heat pen. The change isn't a really big one. Like, you could already pen an E100 turret at 350 mils of heat, so going to 360 didn't change much. And it's the same thing for like the Kron, which went from 363 to 370. It's just not a big enough change to actually notice a difference. Where mediums are going from a value where they would have struggled to pen a heavy frontally to now where they can quite easily cut through an enemy's weak spots. And it gets even bigger when you take a look at the changes to armor, because enhanced armor went from a 4% bonus to a 3% bonus. That's 25% of enhanced armor's effectiveness. So not only did mediums get a buff on their pen, but heavies lost armor essentially. When you pair that with the fact improved assembly also lost 2% of its effectiveness, which again is quite a big chunk of it, that's pretty bad. I mean, either way you're losing HP in a heavy, which is really disappointing, or you're losing armor. And I can tell you for a fact it has definitely affected a lot of tanks I fought against. The 268 version 4 against higher heat pen and lower armor falls apart insanely quick. A lot of my mediums can pen the lower plate of a 268 version 4 now quite easily too. It shows just how much these changes have really affected the game. But we're not done yet. We keep going. Let's take a look at improved optics. This is a bonus to view range for heavy, medium, and light tanks and tank destroyers. So previously, heavy tanks would have 7% view range buff, now they have a 6%. Medium tanks would previously have a 10%, now they have an 8%. But light tanks would have previously had a 10%, now they have an 11% view range. So basically, it's almost double the view range buff for a light tank versus a heavy, which is kind of insane. Tank destroyers as well have lost a massive chunk. We can see TDs went from 5% to 4%. That's 20% less. So yeah, improved optics is kind of useless for, honestly, heavies, but you have to run it for a heavy, because look at CamoNet. CamoNet went from 3% buff to heavies to 2%, which is absolutely atrocious, where tank destroyers went from 7% to 10%. So TDs really didn't get changed too much. You should just run CamoNet on your TDs. But heavies, either way, just got a nerf either to view range or camo, making them once again quite a bit less effective in the battlefield. And as I said, it just keeps getting worse. Improved suspension, which is a equipment which helps out heavies, has now worse terrain resistance crossing capacity on medium and soft terrain, which is obviously quite a bit worse. And while enhanced gun lane drive did get buffed, I would say the largest nerf of them all is V-stabs, going from a 15% on-move buff to a 12% on-move buff. Vehicles like the 60 TP and inaccurate heavies require V-stabs to hit their shots, especially when aiming in on the move. But with V-stabs now being 3% less effective, that is quite a big hurt. Now, a lot of people are looking at Refined Gun and being like, oh, Refined's amazing, this and that. Well, I've done testing. I've talked to my friend who is a data miner and everything like that gets all the values correct. And there's still really no reason to run Refined over V-stabs for the majority of vehicles, and that especially is the case for heavies. V-stabs essentially changes the amount of time it takes you to start aiming in once you've stopped. And that's huge. Where Refined Gun is going to take longer to aim in. So while you do have that overall 15% better accuracy, it is still not as effective as V-stabs. But nerfing V-stabs is really sad because now your vehicle is going to take longer to aim in general. Toolbox, another huge equipment for module repair speed, especially if you're in a heavy and you get a track broken. That's huge to make your track repair better. Well, now it's 10% less effective. Again, just absolutely sad. Consumable delivery system has been nerfed as well. Overall, a lot of the capabilities that you would want on heavies, like engine accelerator, bonus to engine power for heavy tanks and tank destroyers, it went from 7% to 5% for heavies. So basically, if you're driving a heavy, your vehicle now either has less hit points or less armor. You now have less mobility, you have worse track repair time, and you just aren't as good as you used to be. I mean, that's as simple as it is to say. Overall, heavy tanks lost a pretty decent chunk of their capabilities. Now, am I glad about this? Am I sad about this? I don't really know. I think it's not good for the game because it's going to make the battles shorter. You know, battles are already short as they are, and if you're taking away hit points and armor, and you're giving people more pen, it's going to mean that more shots are getting penned, and with less hit points, it's not even going to matter with the less DPM on mediums. I just think that games are going to keep ending faster and faster when you keep making vehicles change like this, but that's obviously my personal opinion. Just to show what a change the E100 has undergone, this is what the STB would have seen in the previous update if you were running gun rammer on the vehicle while enhanced was on the E100. It's a pretty red turret for the most part, and as we can see, basically all of the shells are blocks. Let's compare that to what you're going to see this update. Yeah, it's quite a big difference. And that is because, obviously, with a big change to the AP premium values, yeah, basically, even a fully hull-down E100 can get penned by an STB 50-50, depending on which angle you're looking at. That's kind of insane. The only way to get bounces now in an E100 is to fully angle your turret against mediums. That's quite crazy. And even then, you can still hit little weak spots here and there. And by the way, this is fully hull-down. If you're on flat ground, even if you try to angle the turret perfectly, as we can see, if you just miss it by like 1 or 2 degrees, either side is going to be a weak spot. And even if you do it perfectly, it's still going to be really hard to get bounces against a vehicle like an STB. I mean, look at that. It is the greenest I've ever seen a vehicle's turret like that. And if you're like, okay, well, it's just maybe just a tank like the STB, I don't know, let's go pull out a, I don't know, an Object 907. Let's load heat, you know, it's all red, boom, all green. Again, not as good pen as the STB, but still, you're going to pen an E100 turret any day of the week now, where previously it was something like this. You know, you take off Cali and it would look something like this. It's not even close, you know? Like, look how much you have to over-angle the turret. So, yeah, I would personally say that armor has gotten quite a bit worse. And a really good way to show this is if we make our way to a vehicle like, for example, the Object 268 version 4, which is obviously known for its protection and armor. The V4 running enhanced on its lower plate is about 350 mils thick against AP. So yeah, like heat, it might struggle at certain angles, but if you're slightly below it at an angle like this and you're running Cali, you only need about 330 mils of pen at an angle like this to cut through a V4 lower plate. The superstructure is about 350, where it used to be 370. It's just quite a bit easier to penetrate in most situations where it used to be quite a bit more challenging. And this is going to be the case for any heavily armored tank. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Are you happy with the changes? Are you mad with the changes? All I'll say is that heavy tanks have gotten worse and medium tanks have gotten better. Sure, gun rammer is not as useful as before, but it doesn't really matter when you're able to cut through the majority of opponents you're aiming at much, much easier. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.